Now we're going to talk about preparing containers for planting flowers. I have a little bit of a selection of containers here that you could use. In theory, you can use any type of container at all. You could even use a saucepan or an old drawer or a wheelbarrow, whatever you want to use, whatever you have. The only thing is it has to have some sort of drainage hole. So these ones, the saucepans had drainage holes drilled into them. It's just so that any excess water can escape. We'll talk a little bit more about drainage in a minute. These are ideal, the colanders. Sometimes you can pick them up very cheap, plastic or metal. They have lots of drainage holes, and the holes are so small that you don't have to line the container either. So they're perfect for planting, and they look nice and quirky as well. The more traditional containers then, window boxes. This is just a small one. You can see this one has 3 drainage holes. It originally only had 1. That wasn't enough, especially if I had them out in the winter, so we added more drainage holes there and there. And it's still a bit of a problem because it sits flush on the windowsill. So if you have a container like that, if you could actually put something underneath to lift it up a bit so the holes aren't blocked from underneath, that would definitely help as well for drainage. And then the hanging baskets. That's the very traditional one. I'll show you how to line this one later on. And then you have easier going kind of hanging baskets. This one's been planted with strawberry. They're lined on the inside with plastic, and they're really ready to go. You just fill and plant. And these ones need a little bit more work. So for drainage, if you are looking at pots or window boxes with drainage holes, like I said, make sure the drainage isn't impeded from underneath. But also what could happen is that compost can clog the holes of the container as well. So one of the things you could use is a broken pot, which we always seem to have plenty of. They're ideal really because they're not flat. They have a little bit of a curve there, and if you place them in the container over the hole, there's still a way for water to drain away. Or if they are a little bit flat, you could use maybe 2 of them like that, and then there still is a way for water to escape. So there's one in the middle there as well. One thing I didn't mention earlier was that containers should be relatively clean. In theory, you should clean out containers every year after use, after every season. If the plants were good and healthy and you felt there were no diseases in them, it's okay to reuse them as they are. If you had problems with diseases, it might be a good idea to disinfect them, and you can use something very natural like vinegar in your cleaning water, or tea tree oil is really good as well. They're antifungal and they're sufficient to kill any of the plant diseases that affect your plants. So that container would be ready for planting. If you don't have broken crocks or anything like that, you can use stones as well, big stones, small stones. You can actually add a whole layer of drainage at the bottom using the smaller stones, and that would give really good drainage as well. Okay, so lining a traditional basket. You can buy basket liner, which is a fibrous material lined with plastic on the inside, and they're cut to just fit neatly in there, and they have little holes on the side as well that you can plant through. Traditionally, these containers are lined with moss. So I happen to have a place where I needed to remove moss anyway. A bit dirty, but a few leaves in there. We can easily take them out. And you just use that. This is more for more cosmetic thing, because it'll look nice on the outside when you have that moss there. Actually looks much nicer than the commercial liner that you buy as well. So you have to patch that a little bit. From an environmental point of view, if you do collect moss for your basket, try and not pick it all in the one spot, but take a little bit here and there, and because they're like a habitat in themselves, so you don't want to remove all the moss in one go in just one area. overlap it a little bit as well. It's just so that you don't see the plastic that will go into this eventually. That's a little bit too much. You can cut it, you can tear it, whatever works for you. Put it at the top here. And then we're nearly good to go. What you will find is if you hang that out, quite often you'll get birds getting very interested because it's lovely nesting material, so you might end up sharing with the birds as well. No harm in that. Now we can always add a little bit afterwards if we feel there are gaps. Now to make sure the soil stays in there when you're watering, this is just a little bit of plastic from an old compost bag. Goes in there. Now don't forget your drainage, so just use the scissors, put a few holes in there. Lots of small ones would be ideal. The hanging baskets won't need any stones or cracks in there because they're quite porous anyway. There will be no issues. It'll be too heavy anyway if you put something like that in there. All you need to do then is to cut any excess off so you don't see it, to make it look nice, and then you're ready to put compost in there as well. You have to do that in 2 sessions. It's hard to see. And a little bit this side. It does really look much nicer than the commercial things that you get, and you're reusing a little bit of plastic as well that would otherwise go straight into the bin. There. Maybe not take too much off straight away either, because by the time you've added compost it might pull it down quite a bit, and you can always trim it when you're finished with compost and the planting. Try whatever suits. So that's your hanging basket ready for planting. A little tidying up on that. That will look lovely. Okay. So the next question is what compost to use. And there are plenty of choices. It's actually a bit bamboozling when you go to the garden centre and you see 20 different varieties of compost. At its simplest, you could use any type of multi-purpose compost. This happens to be Tipland, doesn't matter what variety or what brand, should we say. Multi-purpose just means you can use it for lots of different purposes, and filling your containers is just one of them. That's a very basic multi-purpose compost. It's a different brand here. This is called Jack's Magic, and the magic in it is that it has added seaweed, so there's a good fertilizer in there for your flowers in your containers. This is referred to as an all-purpose compost. It's the same thing as a multi-purpose compost, so that would be very useful as well. And sometimes you find composts that say with added John Innes. That basically means that there's an added compost in there that has a little bit of natural soil in it, so it's heavier. I would not recommend that for the hanging baskets because it makes the hanging basket very heavy, but it's perfect for any pots or window boxes that you might have. And another good thing about this one is that it's peat reduced, so it's more environmentally friendly because the extra soil is in there that replaces the peat. And it also has extra nutrients and water retaining gel, which I'll talk to you about in a minute, in it. So overall, this is actually a really good one for your containers. Last but not least, there is a special container and basket compost which has extra nutrients in there as well. It says actually feeds up to 6 months. I would still add feed every few weeks, but it is extra enriched for your containers, baskets and so on. Any of those will be fine. And when you're filling your basket or your window box or whatever you're doing, you can add some other things in there as well. You can add some slow release fertilizer. They're little granules. It's a resin and they're filled with fertilizer, and as you add it to the compost, the resin breaks down and it releases, it gets porous, and it very slowly releases bit by bit extra fertilizer, which is a good idea when you're planting your containers. And if you want to reduce the amount of watering that you have to do, if you get a very hot summer, you can add some water retaining gel. This one's already a little bit damp. It should be completely dry, but it was in the shed and got a bit damp. But what I did earlier, I took 1 teaspoon of the granule as it is in here now, and just added, filled it up, but halfway up with water, and 1 teaspoon filled gave me all this water filled gel. And if you have that in a container in your compost, that will hold on to extra water and then slowly release it as well. So that cuts down, especially for hanging baskets, on quite a lot of watering. One thing to be careful of is when you're adding it, not to overdo it and not to fill the compost right up to the top, because as it swells then it will push out the compost, and it'd be very messy otherwise. But that's everything in terms of preparing your containers. So you could have one session just preparing all your baskets and window boxes and pots and whatever you want to plant, and then the next step, when the plants are ready to be planted out, you can start planting.